Hello, and welcome to the Lucy Liu Show, the fueling station for your mind, business, and life. And now, here's your host, Lucy Liu.
Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another episode, 120 now, on the Lucy Liu Show. So today, we're going to talk about how uncovering your past can help you unlock your future. Thank you for being here, and I hope that you become who you are meant to be by diving deeper into who you truly are. We all have stories from the past, and your story didn't start with you. In order to understand yourself more deeply and let go of those holding blocks, it's important to release those limiting beliefs from the past. And that's why I have my guest today, Heather Murphy. Heather is a clarity and an empowerment coach, genealogist, and host of the Stories in Our Roots podcast. She helps us understand today's circumstances and struggles by learning the stories of our ancestors so that you can live a future filled with clarity, connection, and perspective. So without further ado, here's Heather. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Hi, thanks, Lucy. I'm glad to be here with you.
So you are a family history expert. So why is studying our family history so important?
The biggest reason is because our stories of who we are, of why we think the way we do, our behaviors, they didn't start with us. They started in the generations before us. So as we better understand our ancestors, we can better understand ourselves. And then also there's the added bonus of finding those empowering stories that we can use to help us reach the goals that we want.
I love that. Can you tell us a personal experience you have, how you got into studying your family history?
Yeah, I've been researching my family history actually since I was really young. I was always looking for those stories that connected me to bigger things in history so that it was more personal. And I developed that love and eventually earned a bachelor's degree in family history genealogy and have just continued to research my family. But a couple years ago, I had a different experience with it. I was starting to have a business. I'd been homeschooling my son. And so I was just starting to build up this business. And I was feeling really, really stuck. Like I couldn't figure out why I couldn't just do what I needed to do. And so one day while I was just working in my family history, I made just a little chart that by everybody's names, I also had their occupations. And so I wrote all this out and then I looked at it when I was done. And suddenly it hit me why I was having a block in my business. It was because I have this narrative on my maternal line that moms only work to support their family if tragedy strikes and they're forced to. So in my unconscious thinking, I was thinking that if I was building a business, it was because I had to, and that was going to be detrimental to my children because of the experience of my mother and my great-grandmother. But by learning that story and being able to become more aware of what I was thinking, I was able to acknowledge that that wasn't my story and be able to be more successful moving forward in creating the business that I wanted to.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. That's very beautiful. So we cannot unlock our future and realize our full potential if something from the past that we haven't uncovered is blocking us, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I like to think of it, our parents give us this little packet of information when we're born through the way our genes are expressed and through just the way they teach us. Most of our beliefs are built when we're young children, and it's our parents that we get those beliefs from, and their beliefs were created from their experiences and from the beliefs of the generation before them. So it's passed down both physically and mentally, the experiences that each generation had.
Absolutely. And you mentioned beliefs. It's such a big factor. I talk about limiting beliefs a lot because these limiting beliefs are limiting us because we hold on to them so much to be true, but they're not the truth. I know you speak also on limiting beliefs. So how do you help your clients shatter their limiting beliefs?
I think a big part of it is first figuring out what they are, because like you said, some of those beliefs, we think they are reality because that's what our family has taught us. But if we can recognize that that belief may have served our grandparents, maybe there was a reason why they had that belief, but as it's been passed down, it doesn't hold that same meaning. It doesn't hold the same purpose. And so you can acknowledge gratitude that it served your ancestor, but then also be free to let it go and not feel like you have to continue it on. You can see with more clarity that a belief is not necessarily a truth.
And you mentioned you studied your family tree and you listed down their occupations. Is that something you would recommend everyone to do?
I think it can depend. Like, there's so many ways that you can make a family tree. You could do occupations. You could do what was their wealth status? Like, did they have enough? Were they really poor? Were they well off? What is it that you're struggling with? And then look in those 3 to 4 generations before you and see if you can find any evidence of that thing that you're struggling with. And maybe you'll be able to see some things that'll help you have clarity about yourself.
So, how can we use that to help us prepare for future challenges?
I think that's where kind of the other side of the coin is. First, identifying your beliefs and those that might be limiting, but then also looking for what is that belief that you want to have, or what is that characteristic that you want to have, and look for evidence of that within your family tree, and then use that to propel yourself into the future. So you're identifying those things that you want to leave behind, but then also identifying those things that can actually help you get where you want to go.
So the holidays are fast approaching, of course. With the last few weeks or even few months of the year, we are always involved in all sorts of family gatherings and doing a lot of family traditions. So how can we best use this time to help us in life?
I think the biggest thing is talking to our relatives, especially the older generation. They're not going to be around forever. And while you might have birth documents or census records that you can access 100 years later, once that ancestor is gone, you're not going to be able to talk to them. The records aren't going to tell you how they felt during a certain experience. And even if your direct line ancestor may have passed on, what about their brother or sister? What stories could you learn from their perspective? And that's what really adds so much depth to it, is by talking to those people and getting information and perspective that government records don't give us.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us another example of how your client, what they have learned through talking to their family that have helped them in their business or life?
There's one guest that I interviewed, and he told me, like, as a child, he worked with his grandfather and would learn all these stories about his grandfather. And for them, his grandfather ended up being a businessman. He owned a paper company, but his father came over as an immigrant and had hardly anything. So by talking with his grandfather, he was able to learn the story, kind of their money mindset passed down the generations, where the immigrant ancestor had really stringent rules, like you don't waste any money and you don't waste any opportunities to get money. And then as the next generations went along, it was more about, let's see what opportunities are out there for us to get money, but not being scared of losing it. And so that was something that guest learned from his grandfather and was able to pass down, and has an intention of passing down to future generations.
And what would you say to someone who has maybe a difficult relationship with their relatives and have trouble speaking to them about their stories?
That's tough. It's really just taking what you can and taking little bits, like maybe you just ease something into the conversation that will just be a bit, or maybe it's posting a photo somewhere where they'll see it and asking questions like what was going on in the photo, or it's talking to other relatives that you have a better relationship that would still know something about that person.
So, what is a quote that you go by in life, Heather?
Well, one quote that really kind of sums up what I do and why I help people, that I kind of go by in my business, is by Maya Angelou. And she said, "The more you know of your history, the more liberated you are." And I really think that applies to learning your family history because once you know that information, then you have the power to make a choice how you move forward.
I love Maya Angelou. Don't we all? That's a beautiful quote. So, on those low days in your business, what do you do to reset yourself?
I always get really, really into my head a lot. And one of the things that I've been doing lately is when I get so much into my head that I'm not making any progress when I'm trying to work on business related things, is to do something that will get me back into my body. So I go for a walk outside or I do lunges down my hallway just to kind of balance myself out again. And so that that kind of helps to clear up my mind so that I can start making progress again.
Beautiful. I do the same. So, Heather, how can we find you?
You can find my website at heathercmurphy.com or on any of the social media channels at MS Heather Murphy.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Lucy.
To all the beautiful souls listening, thank you for joining me on this episode of The Lucy Liu Show. When I'm not podcasting, I am coaching high-achieving women in life transitions, getting unstuck, kissing overwhelm goodbye, and living a more joyful and fulfilled life through strategic goal setting and mindset transformation. It would mean the world to me if you subscribe, rate, or share this with a friend. And don't forget to join me for the next episode. Remember, there is always a way and more blessings are coming your way. For free resources and show notes, head over to LucyLuCoaching.com.